Today I'm joined by David Kenworthy. David is an independent researcher in ancient metrology whose work has brought remarkable clarity and precision to some of the most enduring questions surrounding ancient monuments and also ancient units of measure and the mathematical sophistication of early cultures. So good morning, David.
Good morning, Melissa. Thanks for inviting.
I'm delighted you're here because we've worked together for a long time actually now, and we've had lots and lots of things in common, and we found like interesting connections and all sorts of things. So you come from an auditing background, don't you?
I do, yeah. I worked as an auditor for about 25 years. I qualified late. I was in my 30s when I qualified.
Yeah.
But it was a really rewarding career. And I think by the end of it, I was just understanding what auditing was all about. It's that
Just in time for your next adventure when you retired.
I think it was a good grounding for what I'm doing now, for sure.
Yeah. So you started this research when you retired, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It was quite by accident, actually, because I retired fairly unexpectedly. And when I did retire, I was offered a chance to go back and do some more work for a friend. And I said I would. And then on the day that I had to go back, I got so not, I was enjoying not working so much. I decided I didn't want to go back. I,
Mm.
I just wanted to retire and enjoy retirement, which is what,
Yeah. Yeah. But of course, you're super busy now.
well, I'm not retired anymore.
So you've produced loads of academia independent research papers. You have a YouTube channel with
Yeah.
analyses of Stonehenge, the Cursus monuments, the Great Pyramid, the Mayans of Pal, uh, Thom's megalithic yard, Berriman's Eye of Horus meter, the Shusi, ancient cubits, all sorts of
Yeah.
different units of measure and how they all interlink, and especially with an emphasis on the modern imperial system.
Yeah.
So you've actually been very, very busy producing all this work, and of course your papers are always fascinating. Um, you've shown how we have to look at the number systems from the past in terms of base 10, base 12, but also base 99. You've looked at harmonic ratios. There's so much to talk about. So hopefully we'll do a series of these conversations. Um, but
Yeah.
just to get us started, what do you think metrology is all about, especially ancient metrology?
Um, I think it's about understanding that there's something out there in the cosmos that's
Mm,
bigger than we are. I mean, um, it's about a belief that there's a continuity and that things go on after we've finished this life. That there's a continuity to it all, and I think these ancient people, they lived their lives understanding that, and it was part of their everyday existence. So at night, when the stars came out, they were observing them to find out exactly what was happening, because they could see that against the backdrop of the main stars, there were these other movements that
mm,
weren't in context, and they wanted to figure out why and see what it all
mm.
meant.
Yeah, that's amazing because I find that too, that you look at numbers and you get almost a philosophy out of it
Absolutely.
in the context of the ancient world.
Well, I think what they were doing was predicting eclipses. That's what Professor Thom tells us. That's what Sir Fred Hoyle tells us.
Mm,
And I think the numbers are all part of the whole culture and the
yeah.
system, and they're all embedded in the stone circles. So we can't see them, we don't know we're there. And the only reason we do know that they are there is because of Professor Thom
Mm,
and all the work that he did.
yeah. So in a way, you really have to focus on the numbers to understand what the monuments were for, and what you're finding is astronomy, but it's also a sense of what life is about.
Well, I think if you look at the Avebury Monument, which William Stukeley
Mm,
did a lot of work on, and did a lot of drawings. And we're talking about 300 or 400 years ago when Stukely did all his work. What he said the Avebury Monument is, it's the biggest megalithic circle in UK. And he said it's like two dragons, one devouring the head of the other, and that indicates that it's an eclipse taking place. When you get the two dragons, one eating the head of the other, that's an eclipse taking place. And he found this Beckhampton Avenue, and he found the other avenue. So you've got one avenue on one side, one avenue on the other, leading to the circle. And you can imagine in their days, they would have had processions up each avenue and arrive at the circle as the eclipse was taking place. And they weren't looking at eclipses of the sun, although they understood those. They were looking at eclipses of the moon. So all this would have taken place in silver moonlight when the moon was being eclipsed, and it was a full moon. So you can imagine the ceremony and the theatre of all that. And when you go and look at the Avebury Monument, when you walk up the West Kennet Avenue, it's the most thrilling walk that you can imagine when you know what would have been happening at that time. It's absolutely stunning. And when I took an American party led by Larry Paul, and one of the first places I showed them was this wonderful avenue that you can walk up. And as you get to the start of where the stones commence, there's a ridge on the left hand side. And as you walk up that ridge, gradually you just get to the top and you look over it and you can see Silbury Hill. And I think Silbury Hill represents the moon. And you walk up to it and it gradually rises. Silbury Hill gradually rises over the horizon as you walk up. It's absolutely sensational. It's brilliant.
Yeah, you have to be there. So that's also part of the whole experience, just to go and visit the old monuments and to try and get a sense of their magnitude and the feel of the place.
Well,
So the numbers are one very important part of this, but it's not the whole picture, is it? And also the numbers lead you to understand what they're about.
I think I've done all my work on the internet, and all my work is numbers. And I think people think that I'm just a number person, but it's actually visiting these sites for me that's the big kick. I mean, Brodgar, I've been to Avebury, I've been to Stonehenge.
Yeah.
But the best site, I think, is Old Sarum. And what you've got to imagine with Old Sarum is that in the ancient times, when you were walking towards Old Sarum, it would have been white because that's the chalk that it's built on. The sides of it would have been white. And when you get to it, it's the most amazing sight that you can ever imagine. And I came across it by accident when I first started this stuff. I went down to have a look at Avebury with my wife, and we walked down the ridgeway. And when you walk down the ridgeway, you can see Silbury Hill in the distance. And that particular day when we were doing it, it was really lit up by the sun. It was like the centre of the view as you're walking down the ridgeway. So we did that. And then I said, let's go down and visit Salisbury Cathedral, because I really enjoy visiting cathedrals. And while we were driving past, there was a sign saying Old Sarum. So I said, let's go and have a look at that. And we drive up to this site, and I was absolutely staggered that I didn't know about it. I knew nothing about Old Sarum. And when I got in it and started looking at it, there was a cathedral built there by the Normans. It was where the Magna Carta was signed, and I really didn't know anything about this. And it's laid out like the perfect megalithic site because it's an uninterrupted view of the horizon, and the way that the top of a hill has been flattened off, then a Silbury Hill mound has been put in the centre of this massive area.
Yeah.
And I've been told this area, getting back to numbers, is 29.53 acres. So
the significance of 29.53 for anyone who's not sure is?
Well, it's the eclipse month, isn't it? It's the
Synodic month. in days.
6 months, yeah. And I know it's your favorite number. Well, one of your favorite numbers.
I do. I get
Right
very excited about that number.
time. And my view on that is that yes, that number was used, but I think that I like to say they smooth these numbers, so they make them easy. And the number that they were using, which fits in with the imperial system, is 29.333.
Yeah.
And if you cut that in half, it's 14.666. And that is the Eclipse unit that I discovered and wrote a book about.
Yes. So, yeah. So I haven't actually mentioned your books yet. I'm sorry, David. You've written 4 books.
No,
And as we need to talk about all of this, so much to talk about, so we'll definitely have to do a series of these chats. So the Eclipse unit and your Eclipse line, which is really impressive. So this is something that we can look at on Google Earth another time. But for now, if we stick to the units, and I have here a little red book.
yeah,
Actually, you can tell me what the distance between oh, you're looking for your own one.
this is our
Yeah, this is thanks to you. I got it. I have to say it was on your recommendation, and
well,
it's
well
fantastic.
done well to get a copy because they're like gold dust now. They
I
really
know, I know.
don't come up.
Yeah. So if anyone is not sure and if they want to get into ancient metrology or historical metrology, this is the book by Berriman from
Yeah,
the 50s.
yeah.
And it's very, very well written. It's very well thought out. Some things you can absolutely question, but but everything makes sense in
Well,
terms of the system.
he wrote this after he'd retired. So
Mm,
it was at the end of his long productive life as an engineer, and he was the chief engineer of the Daimler Corporation. He was a captain of industry. He was an absolute high flyer, and he was involved in at the time the Wright brothers were getting us into the sky. He was an engineer that was involved in taking what the Wright brothers discovered, taking
mm.
it forward into producing aeroplanes that were usable in the First World War, which
Mm.
it,
Yeah, fascinating character, and what an amazing career. And the book itself is actually not that difficult to read. Like it's clearly written in nice in easily to understandable sentences. It's got diagrams, it's got tables. Um, this it's just so well done. And he doesn't just talk about linear units. He talks about um, weights. He talks about
yeah,
volume, area, gold and silver, and then the different places. For example, he's got a section on ancient Egypt.
yeah. Well,
It's fantastic.
I think Stephen Dale recommended this book to me, and I'd written a book with Hugh Franklin, and it was ready to publish. I had it all on the computer, and I was going to send it to Amazon to publish it, and as an ebook. And this book dropped through the letterbox 2 weeks before I was going to publish this book that I'd written.
Yeah.
I hadn't sent it to Hugh for him to give him the last sort of go ahead to publish. And this book came, and I read this book, and I thought, I'm going to have to rewrite my book. I can't publish a book knowing what I know now I've read this. I've got to get Berriman's units into my book. And in 2 weeks, I scrapped the whole thing. And, well, I didn't scrap it, but I completely rewrote it.
Nice.
And I'm so pleased I did, because when I did it in such a rush that I didn't really appreciate what I was doing.
Mm.
But now when I read it, I think I'm so glad I did that, because it's got all the Great Pyramid base units that
Mm.
gradually work themselves up the pyramid. It's incredible. And
Yeah.
all from Stonehenge to Giza, because Hugh discovered the link in numbers between the Stonehenge Aubrey Circle and the base of the Great Pyramid. And the link is 297 in the Aubrey Circle is 1,000 in the Great Pyramid. And that link is set in stone. And that's Hugh's massive contribution to
Mm.
historical metrology.
Yeah.
Anyone can check that studies this stuff and find out
Yeah.
ratio.
So this is Hugh Franklin. So he's produced some amazing work.
Well, I mean, when I first started this, I didn't know anything at all. I didn't know how to predict eclipses. I didn't even know that the sun every year moves up and down the horizon as it rises. I didn't even know that, which I'm really ashamed to say.
But we don't live in a world where we pay attention to these things.
No, we
We're
don't.
not taught it in school.
Oh, well, where I live now, my garden looks west in the evening, so we get the evening sun. And I've got a stone in my garden that honestly looks like a standing stone. It's so, and it's on a bank, and I've thought about raising it so that I can see if I sit behind it. Well, I see the setting sun, the setting sun, because it goes all the way around to this hill near where I live called Top Hag, and it sets there, and it's like my garden is almost lined up with the actual midsummer sunset, you know, the furthest sunset.
That's fantastic. So you have it right on your doorstep or
But
inside your garden. And when you're looking at the ancient world, it's not just the ancient units that are important to look at, is it? It's also the modern units, and this is absolutely debatable, and some modern units are more popular than others. But for example, the mile, and you talked about Old Sarum. So it's connected to Stonehenge in a really interesting way.
yeah, it's I've done a video about this. It's 6 miles, and what I did, I went. Old Sarum's got this Silbury Hill type mound in the centre of it.
Mm-hmm.
You go there, and there's actually a well in the middle of this circle, which was a big problem for the monks and the soldiers, because that was the only water source when Old Sarum was a Norman town.
Mm.
And so the soldiers had the water and the monks had to go for it. And there was a big fallout, apparently. When you go to Old Sarum, there's a big board that tells you about all this. But if you go on Google Earth and just estimate where the centre of this mound is and drag a line, which you can do on Google Earth, to just drag a 6 mile line, you can use a circle function in Google Earth. And when you drag that line, it automatically produces a circle.
Yeah.
And the bigger you make the radius, the bigger the circle is. So you go on to the centre of Old Sarum and you drag a line for 6 miles, which is 31680 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that, and if you go south from Old Sarum, you're going nowhere near Stonehenge. And then if you fix that circumference and go back to Stonehenge, it goes right through the Sarsen stones.
Yeah, that's incredible. So this reminds me that, well, two things. One is that we have to look at each monument in relation to the broader landscape. So you can't just look at them in isolation. Well, you can, but you won't get
Well,
as
unfortunately,
much information.
archaeologists, that's what they do. They look at each monument. I mean, and they do a fabulous job
Oh, they do, yeah.
of examining all the monuments, but they don't look at the big picture because, well, they're not metrologists or they're not. Well, it's a pretty long thing to do to change what you've been doing for your lifetime and studied and believing about these Neolithic people that they weren't really capable of doing what we're saying they were doing. It's a big stretch of the imagination for somebody to come along and then tell them that this is what they were doing, and they've never got their heads around what Professor Thom did at all.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just Thom, though, is it? I mean, there's obviously John Michel and John Neal. We've got Berriman for one, and many, many people researching today because there's so much information that's freely available. We have Google Earth. We have all this knowledge now about ancient units and about how some modern units were relevant in the ancient world. So there's so much going on, but you're right. It's a question of belief as well. Like, can we really believe that the people who built Old Sarum would first of all be connected to the people who built Stonehenge, and that they would be able to survey so accurately? And why would they do it in the first place?
Yeah, it's a massive ask to change the way that we conceive of what our ancestors were doing. Because when I watched the Mike Parker Pearson program, the brilliant program on telly about the way that they were moving cattle from Scotland down to Durrington Walls and then Stonehenge for feasting at midwinter, I watched this program thinking, wow, this is one of the best programs I've ever seen about this. It was DNA archaeology.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it was ruined by all these people standing around Stonehenge dressed in bear skins or what have you, animal skins, and shaking spears.
Yeah. Ruined by hair and makeup. But it's the wrong projection. It's the wrong image. These people are engineers, they're surveyors, they're astronomers.
I remember at the time when I was watching it, I was reading this book called Pillars of the Earth. It's about the old cathedrals.
Oh, yeah. I love that. What's his name? I've forgotten the author's name.
I remembered his name this morning, but I've forgotten it again. Occupational hazard when you get to my age. But anyway, he's a brilliant author, and it was a brilliant book. And I was watching the telly, and I threw it. And just as I threw it, I thought, hang on a minute. I just sort of partially let go of it, and it fell on the floor in front of the telly. And I was, what on earth's the matter with you? I said, that ending to that program is so annoying. And that's what got me kicked into all this.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, some Professor Sir Fred Hoyle, had produced a book about predicting eclipses.
Yeah.
And so I bought that book, and then I bought another book by another professor, Gerald Hawkins, who'd also done the same. And what they'd said was that the Aubrey Circle, the first phase of Stonehenge, which was built 800 years before the Sarsen circles were built. So there's continuity of society, generational society, all doing the same things over 800 years. That's a massive time span. And they're still doing the same thing. And they're all still using Professor Thom's megalithic yard. And this Aubrey Circle, he proved that you could predict eclipses by moving counters around it because there were 56 post holes. And the number 56 gives us a mile, because if you multiply it by 22 over 7, you get 1760, and that's the number of yards in a mile. And that was the
22 over 7 being pi,
and that
pi approximation.
That was my thinking when I came at this. I thought, I've got to write a book about this. I thought, I'm finding all these things out. And it was like every day I was finding so much out that I couldn't cope with it all, and I thought, I'm an auditor, so I need a plan, because auditors have to have an audit plan.
And a spreadsheet.
you can't do this stuff with a plan. So I thought, I'll write a book, and that will be my plan, telling people what I'm going to do. So I wrote that book 10 years ago, and I've followed the plan in that book these last 10 years. And what I wrote in the book at the end was that what Professor Thom kept saying was they could tell time from the stars, and obviously the planets as well. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I wonder if the mile represents 24 hours, 86,400 seconds. I wonder if it does. And in my book, I said that the mile is 366.666. No, 3.666 times 144. So that shows this, that it's actually representing a day, and using 144 and 3.666. And at the time, I didn't know what 3.66 was, but it's 10 ancient barleycorns. And I put that in my book. And I've got to a stage now where me and you and other metrologists, we're all working together, working out this cubic royal cubit. And we find that that is the design of the cubic royal cubit. I mean, obviously that's for another discussion, but it's incredible. It gave me the chills when I first worked it out. I couldn't believe it. I kept going back. It was less than a year ago when I did this. I kept going back to my computer and doing the calculation over and over again because it is so complicated. And I couldn't believe it. And then obviously I told you about it, and Stephen Dale and it's not been published yet. I'm keeping it. I'm not publishing it because it's our secret at the moment, and we're not giving it out. This cubic royal qubit. It's totally amazing.
Absolutely. And that's the amazing thing as well. It's not just, as we said, about linear units, it's about area, it's about volume. But just now you said two really interesting things. On the one hand, you were talking about the number of post holes
Yeah,
and connecting that to time cycles. So that suggesting that some ancient monuments would be connected to some kind of um, analog computer, that they're the tracking cycles using these pillars. But then the other thing you mentioned is that it's not just the number of pillars, it's also the units of measure, and that these units of measure can be compared to actual periods of time.
that's absolutely right. Well, I mean, what we're all working on now is the arc second, isn't it? Well, the arc second is 1.5 seconds of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take an arc second around the Earth's circumference, in actual seconds, one arc second is the second times 1.5. So that measurement is time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Time and speed is distance travel. We all learned that at school, didn't we? So that the circumference of the Earth is moving 86,400 seconds, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
time and distance are working together. They can't not work together. So
Everything is integrated in this whole space-time
so,
conception.
so this arc second, you were invited as a guest recently on an interview to do the numbers, and the guy that was talking was talking about harmonic numbers, and he came out with he'd worked with John Neal, and he came out with this 101.376 number, and that is for an arc second. And in Berriman's book on page 2, he tells us exactly what an arc second is, and it's 100 Greek feet.
What page did you say?
Page 2.
Page two,
Yeah,
100 feet.
it's 100 Greek feet.
Greek feet, yes.
16.6 digits.
Ah, here we are.
It's an arc
You
second.
see that, page two. Yeah, so this was Adam Tetlow. He's a fantastic researcher. And
Yeah, well, I
so,
need to mention that in case Adam watches this, because I'm working with Dennis Payne at the moment, who's an absolute wizard on Google Earth. I mean,
mhm,
I haven't met
yeah,
anyone like him. And like you say, he's intuitive as well.
very intuitive. I think he just wakes up in the morning
Yeah,
and just connects to the forces of the universe and finds something.
I've just written a paper with Dennis. Well, Dennis did all the work, and then I made comments about his paper.
You're too humble.
he, he, he's amazing to work with because he's changing things. He's discovering so many things all the
Yeah.
time. I'm writing comments about what, and then he does something else. So I have to scrap what I've written and write something else. I was working with him today, and he's non-stop. He's like a dynamo, and he keeps producing all these numbers.
I
But
know.
was it Adam Tetlow that you said?
Adam Tetlow, yeah, he's really fantastic. Well, he's a really knowledgeable metrologist, and
Yeah.
he's really well versed in all the harmonic
Well,
numbers. John
well,
Michel, John Neal.
he's worked with John Neal, so he knows. But this 101.376 is what Dennis keeps discovering in his analysis. And
Mhm.
he did it last night. I'd just done my final draft of summarising what he'd done. And then he sent me another change to the paper that he's just written. So this afternoon, I'm going to have to, if I've got time, I'm going to have to look at that again.
Yeah.
But this 101.376 is the length on the ground of an arc second, 101.376 feet. And that is the system that Neil and Michelle discovered. And
Mhm.
when you multiply it out, you find that the Earth's circumference is 24883.2 miles. And that is 12 to the power 5 as a number, which is unbelievable. And the first time I saw that, I thought, this can't be true. It cannot be true that the Earth median circumference is that.
Yeah,
So
that's absolutely right. So that, and that's correct. Like to within a mile or two of the modern approximation or estimate, that the mean circumference, so not the polar, not the equatorial, but the one in the middle, is
and
this
yeah,
one. So 12 to the power of 5 divided by 10
yeah,
miles.
and this was discovered by the Egyptians. The Egyptians knew this, and the cubit that comes out of this 24883.2, is 1.728 feet. Now, John Neal insisted on using feet, and I use inches, and the cubit is 20.736. But when it's 1.728, it's 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2 feet. I don't think they ever went into this kind of metrology where you put in cubic units into
Mhm.
straight line measure. And that's what I've been working on for this past couple of years.
Yeah, and it's duodecimal, so you have 12 times 12 times 12 coming up again and again. So this is something that we have still today in the imperial system,
Yeah,
although it's not
yeah.
just 12s, it's also 6s and 8s, etc., and
Well,
4s.
well, what it is 12 over 10 times 12 over 10 times 12 over 10. So
Yeah,
your decimal. And that's what they were using. They were
yeah.
putting into one unit, they were combining a decimal and a geodecimal system. They were also putting prime 7 into their systems. They were putting prime 11 into their systems, and they were putting prime 13 into their systems and prime 17 into the systems. And what I've recently found, looking at the table of scripture measures in the King James Bible, they're putting prime 19 into their measures as well. When you put prime 19 into your measures, you hit the nautical mile in this system that they were using. It's mind-boggling. It's
Yeah. There's
absolutely,
so much going on here because like what you're saying is you're talking about arc seconds and miles and nautical miles and it's like basically this is something you've said already. This is a very complicated system.
yeah.
Having said that, there's also a simplicity to it, and then you see the same patterns
Well,
emerging on different scales.
when I worked as an auditor, part of our work was systems analysis. And I wasn't very good at it, to be quite honest, because I'd never been properly trained in understanding it. But by the time I'd trained and finished working as an auditor, I was getting to really understand how systems could be analysed and to make the job easier, because
Mm.
you want to make your job as easy as possible. And systems analysis is giving me this extra skill set that I can use to analyze these numbers. And you can see that these people were manipulating prime numbers, and they were doing it using sort of universal constants like pi and like root 2 and like root 3 and root 5 and root 7, and they were doing it with whole numbers. So, for example, root 2 they'd have as 99 over 70. And if that didn't work, they'd reverse it and have it as 140 over 99. So this manipulation, and those two numbers work with pi as 22 over 7. And Berriman talks about all this in his book. I mean, it's just stunning what Berriman's done. And the other thing, the other tool, I just want to change the subject slightly now because I want to get on to Bill Wilkinson, because I worked with Bill for a few years and I don't know where Bill's. If you're watching, Bill, try and get in touch with me because I've been trying to get in touch with you. But Bill taught me how to use Google Earth as an archaeological tool. And he made some amazing discoveries. And the best one I think that he made two outstanding discoveries. And if anybody's watching, if they can go onto Google Earth and get somebody to show them how to use it, it's so simple to check what he's done.
Mm.
And he was dragging lines from megalithic site to megalithic site. And one of the first two that he did was Woodhenge to the sanctuary. And these two sites were excavated by Maud Cunnington, a brilliant archaeologist, and she left concrete markers. So they look from above like two dartboards. So you can work out where the centre is of both of them dead easy. And he dragged a line between both of them, and it's 81600 feet. And that's
So the significance of 816 is
it's Tom's megalithic inch is 0.816 inches. So how many megalithic inches is that? You work it out, because I can't, not now. But
well, the point is it's we're coming across these same numbers and
all
and then the same kinds of units, the whole family of units.
I've got another message for another metrologist. What's his name? Howard Crowhurst, because I was looking at one of his videos yesterday. I think I told you about it. I thought I've got to tell Melissa about this because I might forget. But he was looking at the Isle of Anglesey, and then he was looking at 200 miles south of the Isle of Anglesey at a megalithic site situated there. But when he actually did the line, it was 204 lines. And it was a Roman author that had written about this line, saying that 200 miles below the Isle of Mona, as Anglesey was called in those days, was this site, this Roman site, or this megalithic site, I don't know. But he found a megalithic site exactly 204 miles below Mona. On his video is called the UK, what's it called? The UK
Solstice line, I think the one that goes alongside parallel to the Michael line, I think he has, yeah.
The UK solstice line. And he's found this line running where the sun is rising, coming all the way, the solstice sun is rising, coming all the way across. It goes down to Cornwall. Mm-hmm. And this line that he's discovered, as soon as he said 204, I knew immediately that it was in megalithic yards, that line. Because the megalithic yard is, if you compare the number 100 to all these units and have number 100 as a central number, the megalithic yard is 102. So 204 miles is going to be full of megalithic yards. And what it actually is, the distance is 1,200 Aubrey circles. The circumference of the Aubrey circle.
The circumference of the Aubrey circle.
Yeah,
okay.
12 circumferences of the Aubrey circle. Exactly. There's no sort of, it could be or it might not be. And he got it exactly to 204 miles. And he didn't know. And he's an expert on Tom, but he's not an expert on the kind of work that we are doing, where we're looking at all the time at these numbers and finding them all the time.
It takes lots of pairs of eyes to see things, though, doesn't it?
Exactly. You know, sometimes you just miss stuff. Like I'm working and he's finding stuff that I've been looking at. I've been looking at this stuff for years and knowing about it. And as soon as I got Dennis on the Eclipse line, he got back to me and he said, you do know that it's 30,000 arc seconds exactly, don't you? And I said, no, I don't know. Thank you for telling me. And this was like a few weeks ago when he saw megalithic. And that is significant because if you multiply 30,000 by 43.2, which is a classic number in metrology, you get the Earth's circumference. And that's on Google Earth. So we're using the unit that's embedded in Google Earth. And Dennis worked it out. I think it's 12.174. So it's very close to a Greek foot. It's just a bit longer than a Greek foot, which is 12.15. And if the Greek foot's 12.16, that's when you get the Admiralty mile in the Earth's circumference. So it's all going on, Melissa. So
you have units that are related to fractions of the Earth's circumference, and it's not just the mean circumference, that there are also units related to the equatorial and the polar circumferences, and also the diameters. Then you have units related to cycles of time, and then they seem to all connect. So, for example, that's what you're getting with the arc second. So it's absolutely incredible, but also the mile. And what do you think the mile is? Like, I suppose it comes from the same system.
It's
And as you
it's
said, so there's 12.5 divided by 10 of them in the mean circumference of the Earth. There are 2,160 in the diameter of the moon exactly, and more or less 864,000 of them in the sun's diameter. So you have all these numbers coming up again and again, 216, 864. What's going on?
um, the mile is an eclipse prediction system, and I've proved it to my own satisfaction, but whether anybody else would believe it or not, I don't know. But when I started this, I had to figure out how to predict eclipses because that's what Professor Thom was writing about. And I went on one of these sites where lots of people with the same kinds of interests are discussing things. And I asked the question, how do you predict eclipses? And this guy got in touch with me and he said, you need to go on the website, NASA website, and you'll find out. There's a guy called Fred Hoyle, and he's known as Mr. Eclipse. And he will tell you everything. He's an American guy, and he's very well known in America. And he's got his own web page on the NASA website. So I looked it up, and he says that the eclipse is 6,585 days and 8 hours. Mm-hmm. So that's a third of a day. So it's 6,585.333 days. And I looked at that and I thought, and I already suspected that the number 6600 was very important because it's the mile turned into a decimal unit, because the mile's 5280, and if you divide it by 8 and multiply it by 10, you get 6600, and the chain is 66 feet. And this is a very, very, very ancient unit of measure. So I've got this 660 and I've got 6585.333. And I already know that a unit of 14.666 will help to predict eclipses. And the difference between the two is exactly 14.666. So what's on the NASA website and what is the imperial system when it's multiplied, when the mile is divided by 8 multiplied by 10, the difference is 14.666. And that is the eclipse unit. Now, Berriman's digit is 0.7333, which is half of 14.666. And Berriman's digit of 0.7333, there are 86,400 in a mile. What can I say? What can I say? It fits like clockwork, like a glove. And it's amazing, and we don't know about it. This book of Berriman, nobody knows about. The Berriman books, you can't get them anymore because I don't think he sold many at the start, and they're just too difficult to find. So we're lucky to have his book.
Yeah.
But they should reproduce it. It should be republished because it's such a brilliant book, and I'm sure that people will be interested in what we've got to talk about because it's creating a whole new idea of what these people were doing. And it was Professor Thom that did it. It was
also Hawkins,
Robin Heath that's carried it.
Robin Heath.
And Bill Wilkinson has produced this Google Earth archaeology, and there aren't many doing it. But all the ones that are doing it are starting to find stuff. And like Larry Paul, whose trip I took, I said earlier, I took this trip around the monument. Larry went up to the Orkneys and he found loads of fantastic numbers up there. Larry, by the way, is he's an Egyptologist, and he does a lot of trips from America to Egypt. Mm-hmm. Super enthusiastic about this kind of work. And he went up to the Orkneys, and he also went to visit, what's it called, that place where he's found this line from Stonehenge.
Oh, the Ring of Brodgar, is it?
in the Dan Brown book,
Oh, sorry, Rosslyn Chapel.
he's found that the distance from the centre of Stonehenge to the front door of Rosslyn Chapel is 1 million units of Route 3
Yeah,
in
in feet.
feet. In feet.
Yeah, in modern English imperial feet.
And these lines will be all over the UK and
Yeah.
between all these megalithic sites. And anybody that's interested just needs to go on Google Earth and try it. It's absolutely brilliant.
That's it. It's just a question of having a look. I actually found one the other day from Stonehenge to the Hill of Tara. No, it wasn't to the actual center of Hill of Tara, but it was 5 squared times a few
Yeah,
thousand in feet.
yeah.
Was it miles?
Yeah.
But you just have to look and
You find
something you shall find.
yeah, and so it leads on. It leads on, doesn't it, to who we're going to talk about now, to David Genevier.
Yes. So that was the main topic of the interview. So David Genevier is a French researcher, and he's done some amazing work looking at various ancient sites, but it's not Stonehenge, it's not Giza. So tell us about his work and what really inspired you.
Well, when I'm working on academia, it's such a brilliant program because when you open up the page before on say you're going to start work on a day, you open up your page and they drop all these papers that might be of interest to what you're studying.
Uh-huh.
One day they dropped David Genevier's paper, and I thought, oh, he's writing about stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah.
He mentioned the Roman foot, so I thought, well, I'll have a look at this. So I opened his paper up, and it's really, really condensed paper about this mosque and all the measures that he's found in this mosque. And I think was it in Tunisia?
Yes, so it's Kairouan in Tunisia, and then he also was looking at a synagogue in the Middle East, Dura Europos.
Yes. And what David had done, he'd asked the curators of the local museum, I think, where the papers were stored that were the dimensions of this mosque. I think that's what happened.
Mm.
And they let him in.
Yeah.
These papers had never been opened for like 1,000 years. And they gave him access to them. I don't know how he managed. He must be a very persuasive person to actually manage to do that. So they let him read all these papers and take all the dimensions down. And then he wrote this paper based on that. And this paper is, I can't describe it. It's beyond brilliant. Excuse me.
No, he's absolutely fantastic, and he's so committed. And I think he's been now to Tunisia several times, researching the place, researching the metrology, and taking photos as well.
Yeah. Well, he'd written all these ratios, and he'd done a ratio for the Greek foot and a ratio for the Roman foot. And from Berriman, I knew these ratios, and it was the same as Berriman. So then I got really interested in what he was doing, and I got in touch with him. But we got a language problem, but we've got Google Translate, so we got around that. I mean, I know you speak French, so you can. I don't know if you've spoken to him, but if you do get a chance,
I'm going to be speaking to him very soon, hopefully.
He's going to come on, is he? Oh, brilliant! I'll really look forward to that. You need to put a translate underneath. But anyway, I got in touch with him, and I said, all these ratios that you're using, I understand them from Berriman, and I can prove that you're right. And for me, I've written a book called Proving the Megalithic Yard, written a book called Proving the Harrison-Stockdale Megalithic Foot. I'm proving that.
The very interesting researchers.
And this is what I like to do. I like to say to people, yeah, I can prove that you're right, and I've done it with David. And he has done, what has really got me is he's done the Great Pyramid. He's done the base of the Great Pyramid. But first of all, the system that he's found is the one that John Neal and John Michel use, right? So in that library, in these ancient documents, the plans for this mosque of Kairouan, he's found the system that has already been discovered by John Michel and John Neal.
Mm-hmm.
And what is so brilliant about what he's done is that he's converted it into decimal. So all his findings are in decimal. So he says the Roman foot is 0.296228 meters. So it's in meters, but the meter is not 39.37. This will only work from Berriman's book if you use a meter of 39.375.
Yeah.
And we know what that meter is.
So 39.375 inches is very close to the modern meter of 39.370078742 inches, which is so the modern value. But there's this other value that's kind of existed unofficially up until maybe the turn of the 20th century. You find it not explicitly mentioned, but assumed in various metrology books, for example, in the articles by Seamouse. And this is something that we've found together has worked very well with these numbers and converting the numbers from imperial to metric, as in meter, using these preserves certain ratios and works well.
So this 39.375 is in Berriman's book, and it's 40 multiplied by 63 over 64.
The eye of Horus fraction.
It's the eye of Horus fraction applied to 40 inches. And what Berriman proves in his book is that the Egyptians were using imperial measure. I know it sounds unbelievable, but this imperial system goes back thousands of years as an eclipse prediction system, and the Egyptians were using it. And there's no doubt about it. The weight of evidence is colossal to support this amongst people in the metrology fraternity, which is a small fraternity that's not very well known, but we're making some big discoveries and people need to know about them. And I'm really glad that you made this platform so that we can all talk about them. But to go back to Genevier, he's discovered this unit called the Sumerian grain. Now, I don't know how or why he did it, but it's absolutely stunning in the base of the Giza pyramid. And he's got this chart here, and it says SG equals Sumerian grain. The Great Pyramid measures 60 quasabs, or 80,000 Sumerian grains, or 440 Egyptian royal cubits. That's what we're all familiar with, isn't it? 756 imperial feet. That's Neil and Michel, isn't it? 756. 700.
Yeah, the harmonic value, harmonic number.
480 Talmudist cubits and 230.4 meters. So he's got the whole solution there. 238.4 is Glenn Dash, what Glenn Dash suggested.
This is 12 as well, isn't it? Times 4.
230.4, if you multiply that by 4, it's 921.6. And 9216 is 96 squared. So again, we've got that hidden square inside the unit. But what David has done is solved the base of the Great Pyramid for all these different units, and they're all working. And what this tells us is they're all coming from this 39.375. They're all in Berriman's book. They're all agreed in the metric and in the imperial, and they fit the model of the Giza base that the two Michel and Neil have worked out. It's a massive paper. This, and just to put it in Egyptian context, because I'm always looking when I'm looking at the Egyptian pyramid, I'm looking at Egyptian units. So I'm looking at the Seked, I'm looking at the Setat, and all the other myriad of units that the Egyptians were using, and looking at the researchers that are studying this aspect of Egyptology, like Milo Gardner that we know, don't we? Milo Gardner's the best reference for this kind of work. And I've worked with Milo, and he's taught me how to do Egyptian maths. And it's really difficult because they use one all the time as a fraction. Everything's got
it's totally different.
It's so different. But to understand the Neil and Michelle Royal Cubit using the notation that Milo uses, and for me that's enough. I can't keep doing Milo's work. It's too difficult. But we've got this 80,000 Sumerian grains as one side of the Great Pyramid. So if you multiply that by 4, it's 320,000. Well, his Sumerian grain in decimal is 0.288 centimeters.
Oh, so this is the centimeter of the ancient meter. Yes. So again, we have these numbers. So 288 is 12 times 12 times 2.
This system, as we've seen, is 12 over 10. It's 12 over 10 or 10 over 12. They're using that all the time, so it's integrated. But what Genevier, what you alluded to there is it's 2 times 12 times 12. So the base unit is going to be 12 times 12, which is 0.144. Use that as your base unit. Instead of the base being 320,000, it's 640,000. And we know that this has got to be an Egyptian solution because 64000 is the Hecat, the Egyptian Hecat. It's a lot of Hecats. It's like 100,000 Hecats.
So can you just say what the Hecat is? Because in case people don't know.
64, and it's the Egyptian unit of cone measure. So it's a volumetric unit. It's 4 times 4 times 4 as a volume, and it's 8 times 8 as an area, and it's 64 as a straight line unit. And David effectively has found out that the Giza base is just 64 with a load of zeros after it. You can put as many zeros as you want, to be quite honest, because once you start putting zeros, it's just a matter of making the unit smaller to put a note on the end. So effectively, the design of the Giza base is 64. And it's a heck.
So 8 times 8. So the significance of the Giza base is that it's, and it has been considered for a long time, a sort of repository of the most essential measurements, both in terms of units and in terms of the things it's referencing, like the size of the Earth and time cycles.
But the important thing for us as metrologists is that the unit that you're using is 0.144 centimeters, because that is the cubic royal cubit. And we've got to explain that, but that's a long way down the line. But
that's for another time. Yeah, and so David Genevier has also done some work, including the Roman foot, the Greek foot, the Arab foot.
Yeah. Well, he's done this massive table on this sheet that I've got here with all the ratios. So you can ratio table, and you can find out how many meters there are in any unit you want to, or how many feet there are in any unit you want to, or how many Arab feet there are. And there's a whole number ratio for everyone. That's why it's such a fabulous piece of work. And I went through it, and you've written 2 papers about this, so we need to talk about those really before we wrap it up.
Let's do that then. So talking about the Arab foot then in particular, this is really interesting because it's something that works really, really well at Giza, for example, and also elsewhere. And I think he has the relation between the Arab foot and the nipple cubit as 50 over 81.
Right.
81 being 9 times 9. So then we have different numbers again.
Yeah, it's all here. But your papers that you've written, the first one is sort of a breakdown of what David initially did. They're on your site, Mercurial Pathways. And the second paper, you go into the mechanics or the mathematics of it. And in that paper, I've done a spreadsheet I spent months working on it, and I never thought that it'd get published because I didn't know. I tried to publish it, but I couldn't get it, the format right. But you've published it, and I'm really grateful that you've done that, because my spreadsheet reconciles all these measures of Dave back to Berriman's table of linear measures, so that we've got the whole audit trail from him getting his papers in the moss, getting out all the numbers, and then tracking them all the way through to Berriman. His numbers are in the metric, but Berriman's numbers are in the imperial. And what we find is the ratio, the very important ratio between the two is the inch. When the meter is 39.375, the inch is 640, which is 10 hecad, divided by 252, which is 36 times 7, so the sexagesimal 36.
Yes, or 8 times 8 times 10 over 6 times 6 times 7.
And I told you that they're using 7 as well. Well, the 7 is hidden in this inch, in some ancient centimeters, and it's not quite 2.54. It's slightly smaller than 2.54. Say that it is 2.54. And then the final thing is, at Giza, is that the savants, the French savants, they measured the base of the pyramid. They were the first people to take all the sand away, and they measured the base of the pyramid, and they measured it, and from the measurement they got the meter, which is a geodetic measure. And that's
an interesting point to pick up maybe on a subsequent chat. So where does the meter come from?
Well, the meter is, the meter's been kicked around a lot, hasn't it, over the years, and they've changed. The speed of light came into it at one time, and now it's based on some sphere of silicon or something. I don't know what it's based on now. It's gone silly, really, the way that they're doing the units now.
It's not something that's easily verifiable anyway, but this is the official definition of gamma ray or something. But going back, that is to the French Revolution times, it would have been officially about a particular division of the polar circumference.
So you've got 40,000 kilometers as the Earth's circumference.
Yes.
And the Giza base is measured in those meters. And we can prove it, actually. We can through our metrology. And to get the Egyptian royal cubit, the Giza base, when it's 921.6 meters, has to have a meter of 39.37. And that gives, in inches, it gives a cubic royal cubit of 425 inches. And that's what Berriman says it is in his book. It's incredible. Everything slots together like a glove. There's no missing links. There's no areas where you can argue the toss. It's all black and white numbers.
Having said that, there are some variations. So, for example, there's the Regisma ratio, so 437.4 over 437.5, which produces some variations which are important. And then there's also the ratio between this ancient meter and the modern meter, which is 8,000 over 8,001 exactly, again. So there are some variations that are important, but on a very small scale.
Yeah. There are variations, but we can explain them. That's what I'm saying. We can explain what they are. And you wrote a brilliant paper about "Don't be afraid of the meter." I think it was called "Don't be afraid of the meter," and the meter is conceptually, the savants did an absolutely brilliant job working it out. They wanted to give something new, didn't they? They were fed up with the old measures. They wanted something new in this age of enlightenment.
Yeah, they couldn't have the foot of the king.
So they used
the king had his head chopped off.
But what Jomard, he was in charge of it all, I think, at the pyramids. What Jomard said was that the Giza base is, I think it's 30 arc seconds.
That's right, yes. So he was thinking in terms of arc seconds. So we'll come full circle, literally, back to our arc seconds.
Yeah.
And this is something that, as you say, Jomard noticed when he was in Egypt on the Napoleon expedition. He noticed.
Yeah.
Maybe he was looking for it. Maybe he kind of knew. I don't know.
I think Jomard started all this metrology stuff.
Yeah,
really.
maybe we don't give him enough credit.
With that one idea. I don't think they get the credit they deserve. And I mean, the meter gets slagged by us English people, doesn't it? we don't like it if we don't invent something. So it's a brilliant invention. But if, like you said, they considered 39.375, if they'd have actually done that, then it would have unified everything.
Mm-hmm.
It would have produced this unification of 640 in the meter and 252 in the imperial.
Mm-hmm.
252 is such a fantastic number. I mean, I think 252 stades is often quoted as the circumference, 252,000 or 1,000.
Oh, yes, I forget how many zeros, probably three.
And what you find is that using different versions of pi, and there are lots of them, and we can probably do a talk about that. There are lots of them. Using different versions of pi, all these circumferences are notional circumferences, but the people that are designing the circles know what they're doing when they use this different version of pi. And at Stonehenge, in Thom's first book, he identifies three versions of pi. One is 3.125, one's 22/7, and one is put it down as 3.139. But that, in actual fact, is 408/130. And when you multiply those three together, you get the number of feet. The numerator of those three fractions gives the number of feet in the Aubrey circle. And they're all eclipse prediction units. I've talked to you about 22/7 before.
Yeah. So we're back to the Aubrey circle. And I think the Aubrey circle is just as foundational as the Giza base. It's actually linked. They are connected in terms of number, which is really interesting. But again, we can have a look at those another time, maybe. Just in terms of the Giza base, what do you think is something to remember from it just for now in terms of David Genevier's measures and what it tells us about, the arc seconds and maybe the circumference of the Earth?
I think that this Genevier 80,000 Sumerian grains is something that we should all be remembering as part of the base of the one side of the base, because the numbers are crazy when you use cubits. But when you use Sumerian grains, they're round numbers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for your time. And that was absolutely brilliant. So we've talked about way more than we were going to. And I hope it was...
I thought we might do, but it's just been great working with you. I've had some...
Yeah, I really enjoy working with you. You're so enthusiastic and so supportive. And you're always so interested in other people's work, which is really fantastic. And it's thanks to people like you that there's a sense of community, people working together and sharing ideas. So I have to hand it to you. It's just really nice to work with you. And I think other people really appreciate that too.
Okay, well, thanks very much for letting me on.
Thank you so much.